You're like, how can I properly evangelize to spread the words to the people and stuff? Which is tricky because you don't want to be a weirdo like that. But at the same time, you possibly could learn from effective movements that have spread through society in the past, religions included, and find out how they break it to people, you know, and maybe emulate that. Yeah, cult is just a natural, I mean, it's a word that we invented, but it's describing a natural phenomenon of human social organization, which is to gather together around a leader and a set of ideas, because that's what allows us to live in groups. So we've been doing that around ridiculous ideas and good ideas for as long as we've been humans. So you got to use that same built-in tendency in your fellow humans to like create the good ideas. So one time I did do a talk at a blogger conference about how you should not start a blog, you should start a cult, because then that's a more dedicated following. And it was kind of ironic, but also kind of true, because I realized even at the early stage that I'd sort of accidentally started a cult with my blog, because that's just my sense of humor revolves around, you know, like blowing up ideas to be extreme and making jokes about them and making a sense of us versus them. So if you study how religions and cults of the past and how they spread, then you'll actually learn a little bit about how to spread good ideas. And then you can take, you know, really just learning about human persuasion and human culture, which is starting to sound a little bit like academic and lame, but if you can boil that down to super practical tips, like how to introduce an idea to a person such that they'll be excited about it, you can do it. And actually, like, I do have one tip like that, which is just live by example. So you live by example, but make sure you're doing it in a way that others are going to perceive as positive. So like you have to be happy about it. You have to be, you know, have something about your life that other people would want to emulate. Then that is the highest form of persuasion. So if you're trying to persuade your mom to behave better with like, you know, health and money type stuff, then just model the behavior and make sure she knows how happy you are about it, and then she's more likely to come around than if you are showing up and you're unhealthy and you are stressed about money and then you're telling her how to manage her health and money. That's not going to work nearly as well, because you need an advertising jingle to get people interested. I mean, and everybody wants to be rich and happy and maybe even a bit powerful. So it makes sense to frame it. It made sense to me to frame it in that discussion, because those things really are good. Like, those are an important part of what makes me feel like I have a good life too. But yeah, you can't just make it the only goal. Like, once you have $1.61 million, that's enough to be rich. So like, struggle, don't be happy, and until you reach that number, and then you can start being happy. Like, you don't want to do that. You have to think about it more like, I'm going to do stuff that makes me happier right now because I'm going to live a better life, and more money is a byproduct of this happier life. So it has to be win-win from the start, and every dollar that you have to your name is a little bit of boost to the other effort, which is the real point, which is living happier. But then you have these extra dollars, which are more freedom, and they're pushing you along, like a conveyor belt is going forwards instead of back. So that's how I think people should think about it, is benefits begin immediately, and not everybody does that. Some people are thinking too much about, I'm going to stay in my terrible lawyer job one more year so I can get that extra $200,000 saved so I'll really be safe to retire. Like, no, don't do that. Quit now and take a break, because if you really don't like your job, you got to quit as soon as possible, and then just start living healthy, and then, you know, you'll find ways to make a bit of money doing stuff that you love over a longer period of time. The more I've been writing about it and thinking about why you'd bother to be retired early, and why you'd bother to change your life, and even why you'd bother to be generous, you know, like the effective altruism movement, for example, where you're giving your money away to people that you'll never meet in order to save lives and stuff. All of that still boils down to you being happy. So, and even if you're like trying to be sacrificed for your own kids, that's still because at a deeper level, you are happy about it. So you think about that more as your core value is being happier, and then that can guide your other decisions to be a bit more happiness creating. So happiness is the only logical pursuit is a good thing to remind yourself of, so you don't get distracted and, you know, like leasing a BMW You know, you think, well, I like the seats and the car is fast, but you really think about the bigger happiness picture, and then you might be able to talk yourself out of it.